Okay. First of all, why bring back Dreadstar and Company?
I bring Dreadstar back because he's my baby, and there's kind of a long story involved in this. Actually, about 3 years ago, I blew a big hole in my hand with a compressed air accident, and I figured my drawing career was pretty well ended at that point. And so I did some writing. I worked with Alan Davis on my final Thanos stories, and did a few other little things here and there. But all the time I was doing it, I was also squeezing this rubber ball and doing these other exercises for the hand. And, just so I could button up my own shirt. But along around the 2.5, 3 year mark, my convention appearance agent asked me if I would do this sketch for this young woman he knew who I'd met once or twice. I didn't really recall her that well. And she wanted not a Thanos drawing, but a drawing of Dr. Doom. She was a big Dr. Doom fan. And I was a little annoyed by that, but okay. But I said, I can't do this. But she was very persistent. And I finally started meeting her at conventions. She was working as Keith Giffen's inker at the time. And I finally, at the end of one of these conventions, when I was alone in my hotel room, I sat down with a pencil and did her Dr. Doom drawing. And I went, oh, that's kind of surprising. My hand has not cramped up like it has in the past when I've tried drawing. And part of the reason to that was I was working on the Dreadstar omnibus, where we were collecting all the things, the 1,500 pages or so that makes up the Dreadstar omnibus at this point. And there was no digital files, so I was having to scan and touch up and make some changes to from the comic books themselves. And while I was doing this, I was working with a stylist, which is not the same as trying to draw because there's no pressure, just put the thing down and move it around and you get what you want. So my hand, I didn't realize it, my hand was actually getting the exercise during that period. And so, I kept running into Jamie Jameson, who was the young woman who asked for the Dr. Doom. And before one of these conventions, I thought, well, maybe I'll, do up about 3 or 4 drawings to do as convention sketches. And I ran into Jamie at this convention, and she was really annoyed because Keith hadn't showed up at the convention, which Keith had a habit of doing. And so she wasn't sure what she was going to do. And I said, well, why don't you ink these 3 sketches? And, we'll split the things. And excuse me, I have to snap my fingers at a cat over here who is playing with the curtains. Yes, I'm talking to you, Victor. Her cat's name is Victor Van Doom. There she goes again. Somewhere I've got a squirt bottle. She's going to bring down those curtains. So where was I? Oh yeah, so she inked these sketches, and I thought, well, these are really good. She works well with me, and I was realizing I was drawing again, and I started thinking about what I wanted to draw, and I didn't want to go back to either of the 2 majors. Right. So I thought, well, I'm just finished Dreadstar, and I'm working with these good people over at Ominous Press. They did a beautiful job on the omnibus, and so I thought this would be the place to do it. And we talked it over, and Ron Mars and I decided we could do another 100-page graphic novel like we were doing with the Thanos. And when we did like 5 or 6 pages, and ran into Jamie at another convention and said, hey, how would you like to ink these? And she kind of freaked out at first because she hadn't really done any big jobs. And but she agreed, and she started doing them, and we did the Kickstarter, and the rest is history. We have Dreadstar Returns now to show off, and it's You can get it at Ominous Press at their website right now. We're working on the comic book outlet things, but what was happened with the pandemic, everything's gotten a little crazy. And so what you could have settled out in a month's time now takes several, but we'll get in there. And it's a really good looking package too. I'm quite proud of the book.
Yeah, the artwork from the previous sample they sent me was fantastic. You guys did a great job on it. Well,
yeah, and you ought to actually see the physical book. The physical book is a beautiful piece. You know, I'm going to disappear for a moment and come back to the book. Like I said, you were my first interview of the day, so I haven't been completely prepared, but it's a great looking little book. Nice little hardcover edition, and the print quality is just terrific. I'm very proud of this project. And Jamie and I are busy on the next one. We started in on Dreadstar versus the Inevitable, and I'm like 60 some odd pages into it, and she's still in the teens in her inking part. But it's moving along, and we'll have another book. We're going to try and get at least one out a year once we get on the assembly line. I've got like about 5 of them planned out. So, you know, everybody get their money ready. I'm going to take as much of it as I can over the next 5 years.
Well, it's a good investment. I really enjoy it, like I said. And speaking of that, in the graphic novel, see the consortium's being built. And this is just my perspective, but it looks like Dreadstar and his company is becoming kind of like Space Police, which to me reminds me of older series like the Lensman series. And I don't know if that was an influence in the series, or just like a really cool coincidence.
I read the Lensman series way back, even before I was in service. So I remember they were kind of like the groundwork which they built the Green Lantern Corps on. I'm not quite sure where the similarity lies right now, other than science fiction, and it's a group of people going around having adventures. But you know, all this stuff influenced me along the lines. Every comic book I ever read, every movie I've seen, you know, they're just for the mill that, you know, is constantly grinding away in my head. And, you know, if there's anything there to remind somebody of something else, it's probably because I read it at some point or another, and it's been incorporated in there. There isn't such a thing as an original idea much anymore, you know, until we get some new science that creates some opportunities for new ideas. I mean, you couldn't do computer stories the way you could a couple of decades ago because we just didn't have the knowledge of it. And now, you know, Motherbox and stuff like that, which was forefront, is common. You're holding it in your pocket every day as your iPhone or what have you.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, next question. Is there a trick between juggling intergalactic politics and extinction level cosmic events?
Could you say that again? Your sound quality breaks up on me here on this thing.
Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm going to.
Is that better?
You do sound, yeah, it does sound like I can hear you better.
Hold on.
Let's try that question again. We'll find out. It's the longer sentences that we're breaking up.
Can you hear me better now, sir?
Yes, that sounds very good.
Okay, good. Okay, what I was asking was, is there a trick between juggling extinction level cosmic events and galactic politics?
Is there a balance in every story? And what you're talking about there is a more, I tend to think of as your heavy duty central story and a little bit of comic relief. We have a little bit of politics at the beginning of Dreadstar Returns. I kind of think the way I structured the story is like a Simpsons episode where Bart at the beginning is caught, you know, doing graffiti, and then the main story is Homer blowing up the plant. And so we do have a little politics at the beginning, but the gist of the story and the heart of it is an unrequited love story.
Right.
When I sat down and started plotting out the book, I wanted there to be the same time span that went with the characters as it did with me between one story and the next. And so there was 20 years or more of a lapse. And I wanted to find a place that each one of these characters would be at 25 years later. Dreadstar, who is, I always called the anarchist without a second act, has found his place in the society. He's found a way to take his destructive tendencies and put them to a constructive use within the society of what we call the Willow Consortium, which used to be the instrumentality in the old days.
Right.
Eddie has become a cop. Two-Ton is unemployed. Willow is still running things, and a few other characters who we catch up on. But as I was doing this, I'm going to be very careful not to do a spoiler here. I had one character from back in the old days that was, I always felt I didn't do this character justice. And I felt that this character's story was incomplete. And so I went back and brought this character back and filled in where it has been happening with this character for the last 20 some odd years and taking the story from there. And I think it worked out pretty good. And, it was kind of a tricky proposition because I wanted to get the old readers back, but at the same time, I wanted new readers to smoothly come in here without having to read the entire Dreadstar omnibus before they could sit down and enjoy this story. And what folks have been telling me, managed to pull that one off. So I'm quite pleased in that regard.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. I have a couple of sporadic issues, and I got to read some stuff a while back when the Epic line was out. So I was able to reconnect really easily when I read it. So yeah, that was well done.
Yeah, we did a little thing with the characters at the beginning. So you had, a little 2-page, this is Two-Ton and he did this and that. So that helped. And then the story itself didn't require much backstory that we didn't provide in the story itself. So it was tricky, but you can't come back on stage after 25 years without doing a little improvisation here.
And kind of tying into that, Dreadstar was the kickoff comic for the Epic line back in the day, and it has a lot of fans. So was there any pressure telling the new adventures, or was it kind of like coming back home?
I was very much coming back home. I mean, there's always pressures on structuring the story, like I was talking about a moment ago. But it didn't feel difficult. It felt very comfortable. My big worry was my hand cramping up. I was afraid I was going to get like 50 pages into the story and not be able to finish drawing it. That didn't help. That didn't happen, rather. Working with Jamie Jameson on the art was a pleasure throughout. In fact, she came in on many occasions to add her 2 cents to where things were going. She is very constructively critical at times. She hated the look of Willow. And so we redesigned Willow. And she was a big help on that. As soon as I agreed to do it, I was started to be flooded with JPEGs of hairstyles, warm-up suits, and boots, and million boots. And she says if she was in this interview, she'd say, "Oh, women in their boots." So, and there's a couple other places where, I just said, I got to design up a weird creature for this one panel. What do you think? And she sent me a list of different kinds of weird creatures, and I sort of combined them together and threw in a floating eye, as she says. And there's one panel with this very weird looking creature in it. So it was a compilation of our 2 thoughts on that. And, otherwise, working with Ron Mars over at Ominous has been a pleasure. And all around, things have been working. Phil Smith over there, he's their graphic and IT person. And he was a tremendous help throughout.
Cool. going back to Vance Dreadstar, I know he started as a hunter and you describe him as an anarchist, but kind of when looking at this graphic novel, kind of looking at the couple, 2-3 issues I have in my collection, to me, he seems almost like I'd say the blue collar guy in the middle of this big level conflict around him. He just seems to manage it very well in his own way. He goes in and
Well, calling him a blue collar guy is right on the money. He's the kind of blue collar worker that you would find in any bar complaining about the way things are stacked up against you in a capitalistic society. Difference is he's got this power sword and this kind of unique headspace that he doesn't like injustice, and when he gets around to it, he finally overthrows that injustice. Unfortunately, he's not very good about working in a society that is left from the ruins that he's made of the old one. That one stint he had as a police officer sort of proved that he was a failure as a normal everyday Joe of any kind. He was a revolutionary, he still is a revolutionary, and the stories are going to be about him challenging power. Well, they go on to say, instead of digression, Dreadstar Returns is very much a pandemic book. I got through it as quickly as I did because we were in the middle of the pandemic and we were quarantined. I lived up in the woods. And so the only thing I had to do every day was draw or clear this dead wood out of the 6 acres I was living on. It became even more of a pandemic book. About 20 some odd pages into it, Jamie contracted COVID-19, not once, but twice, and had very serious case of it. A number of points we thought we were going to lose her. Fortunately, she made it through and everything's worked out okay. So this is very much a pandemic book, but the next book, The Inevitable, is more a book about and that came from the pandemic. Right. It's about facing what you have to face in life that you have no control over. Well, this was a return as an unrequited love story. The Inevitable is a story of having to come to terms with your own limits and inabilities, and the outlook on things and how everybody approaches it. There'll be different people in the cast who approach the same situation in radically different ways, the way people did in dealing with the epidemic here. You know, we had a wide range of responses to it. Some of them adequate, some of them good, and some of them catastrophes, just walking catastrophes. First few months in this country, and places like Brazil and Mexico and a few others, Britain, just the leadership just failed the people, and literally thousands of people died because these guys were inept, and they should never be forgiven for that.
Right. And kind of going back, I don't know if this kind of dovetails with that. The influence of things you can't control. But in this graphic novel, I don't know if this is spoiler territory, but we're going to see where Dreadstar is going to see new power levels and having to manage them all over again, like he has before, like where he can fly and everything else. Is that something that's kind of having to remanage stuff all over again?
Well, I brought him back about the power level and the set level that he went out on when, at the end of the last, the Peter David, Ernie Colon Dreadstar. He was at over at Malibu. And the flying part in that was a spell that we went through that I wanted to do. The trouble with owning and having control of your own characters is that you are responsible to keep yourself in control of the whims that may take you. And I missed at that point drawing Superman and all these other characters that could fly. And so we went through a spell where Bats became more of a superhero. In retrospect, it may not have been the best idea, but I worked 10 years on this guy, and you have to make changes just to keep yourself interested. And that was what that was more about than anything else. But at the core, he's the guy in the hood with the sword. And that's what we always come back to. And if I get a little crazy down the line and want to change him around, eventually he's going to come back with that sword.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I'm a little bit older and a little bit less whimsical than I used to be.
I know you talked about this was kind of like the pandemic book, but do you think this is also kind of a good fit, because Dreadstar is kind of like again, this is just my interpretation, the noble barbarian type in a way.
Well, the sword, yes.
Yeah. And then you have a lot of modern interpretations of that with kind of like the characters portrayed by Vin Diesel and Jason Momoa. That's kind of become something audiences have become kind of familiar with now. So do you think the timing will help with the sales, or the looking for this kind of character and the fandom?
Well, he's an archetype.
Right.
His Conan is a good one to point out as a forerunner to him. There's a character called Nightmaster, I think, that Bernie Wrightson did over at DC.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That was crazy.
Anything that has a sword has a certain amount of swashbuckling quality to it. There's going to be inevitable comparisons of any character to other characters that have gone before. We're storytellers, and though there may be a limit to the amount of different types that we can tell stories about, it's the telling of the story and what the story is that is a variation. You basically have only three story types. It's man against nature, man against man against himself. So the thing is to find the variations that make up what is a new and unique package, rather than every element being new and unique, because quite frankly, you can't do that.
Right.
If everything is new and unique, there would be nothing for the reader to identify with. And you would just lose, you'd lose any context of being able to relate to the story. So there's always going to be something that's a little bit like something else. And as far as what has helped the sales, I think the Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame helped more than anything else. We were able to, at the time, break the Kickstarter records. Keanu Reeves has since beat us out by a long shot with his Kickstarter, but he's got 8 movies under his belt. I had like 5 seconds in one movie. So it all, it works out.
Now, I don't know. I'm trying to say this in a way where I'm not too spoilery here, and I'm hoping getting his name right. But is Sigi?
Syzygy.
Syzygy. Thank you very much.
It's an astrological term. It's the planets are running into alignment. About a decade ago, they were calling it the Jupiter effect, but the scientific term is Syzygy.
Right.
He's still
Syzygy,
dead.
Yes.
No spoiler.
I understand he's still dead, but
him and Elvis.
But it being a comic book, is from being dead, is he going to be prominent anyway, or just kind of be where he is right now in this last graphic novel?
I'll tell you right up front, I have no major plans for Sigi.
Okay.
He may show up again because he is a dead mystic. You never can tell about these things. You may have to do an introduction or something to another dead mystic or another 5 mystic for all I know.
All right.
I guess we'll just have to find out about that as we go along. But Sigi, I always enjoy it.
Yeah. Neat character. The whether it be the Infinity Gauntlet Saga or Dreadstar, is there kind of appeal for you in your writing of doing the space opera type stuff? Is that kind of like,
you can see we also have dogs here.
right? Voicing
Yes,
his opinion, of course.
the appeal of the space operas, especially in the drawings, is that I don't have to draw horses or cars. Sit, come here. Sit. I'm trying to do an interview here. Psst, psst. If she comes over, I'll introduce you. But that's my joke answer. But the real answer is the fact that you get these stories off of Earth. It opens up a whole new different way of doing things that keeps you from getting preachy about your story. You can do things that you wouldn't be able to do in another story without sounding too political or too like you're in a pulpit somewhere addressing a crowd of churchgoers. I enjoy building up new worlds. The Willow Consortium and its world is, something that I've taken a couple of decades to create and done something similar in different places other times. With Breed, there was Elseworld or Elsewhere rather. And, it's just a matter of, it's a good platform to go from and I enjoy it and I don't have to be restricted to, I got to get a car in here that looks like this, that sort of thing.
Right, because on a whim, you could say, well, this scenery or this starship fits in right here where I want it, and because it's my world.
Yeah, and plus space backgrounds today with the computers and all that, that saves you in trouble of having to fill in and then put in all those little stars like we used to do in the old days. I can grab up a JPL JPEG and throw it in there, make some modifications, and get away without getting sued by JPL.
It's a good trick if you know it. And you going back to what you said earlier, you said you had 4 or 5 more graphic novels planned out after this one.
Yeah, we're in the midst of Dreadstar versus the Inevitable. I've got a solid story for the follow-up, the 3rd book, and what happens in the next 2 books have set up events where I would want to do at least 2 more, and I know the groundwork structure of both of them, but they haven't really been plotted out as far as the 3rd one has. These things kick around in your head a long time before you actually sit down and put anything on paper.
I can actually understand that.
Yeah, there's a lot of car drives, shooting the shit with Jamie about ideas and different things like that,
And I know Dreadstar's taking up your time right now, but are there any other projects you're involved with right now or you're working on, or is this just kind of be your main focus for the time being?
It's the main focus. I have a project that Jamie and I are working on with Rags Morales, which we really can't talk about much at this point. It hasn't gone along far enough. and a couple other things here. But Dreadstar is the one solid thing that's there that I've committed to, and definitely going to be doing. The rags job is also something I committed to, but like I said, there's always ideas floating around, and you just have to find the time to get to them. Now, there's only 24 hours in each one of these damn days, you know, and I'm trying to lobby to get that changed, but, you know, my influence in Washington is, you know, minimal.
Maybe hijack the time stone, take it for a drive, and
Yeah, but I think that got destroyed at the end of the, or misplaced, or out of, at least out of reach for me. You know.
right.
I have my limits. I'm a creator, but not omnipotent.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have, Mr. Starlin. Thank you again for your time. Again, I really enjoyed talking to you again. This was, again, a fun interview.
That's been a pleasure at this end also. Thank you. All right.
You have a wonderful day. And once I see these where I can get them myself, I'm going to definitely for sure get the when it comes out, the graphic novel, because I just love, I can't wait to see it in hardback where I actually can hold it in my hands, because the digital version was awesome. So
yeah, it will be available. You can get it through ominous.com right now. Ominouspress.com, as somebody off screen has come out to remind me. But and we will eventually get into the comic book shops.
Outstanding. Well, thank you very much again, sir. You have a very nice day.
All right, you take care. And now I'm off to the next interview. All right, you take care.
Yes, sir.